Professor Kent has been appointed to present the case. You have in front of you an investigating officer report by one of the lecturers who's kindly done it. Margaret Smith, lecturer in biomedical sciences, who's kindly done it for us. Dr. Naga is going to represent, in fact, what should we call you? You're a lawyer. We just call you lawyer in this.
Can I be Barker?
Mr. Barker is going to represent our student. Now, we're just having some technical difficulties getting this up, but what I'd like the rest of you to do is to put yourselves in the yourselves in the heads of the panel. And so in the panel we have So what we're going to be doing is doing a very, very, very sped up version, and you will have an opportunity to ask the student questions. So these people are extra on the panel. Thank you very much, panel, for coming. I will be going through the procedures, and the panel will have had a chance to meet beforehand and had a bit of a recap of the procedures and briefing. Okay, welcome Mr. Walker, welcome Mr. Barker and Professor Kent, who I understand you're presenting the case for St George's.
That's correct.
Today. Can I just ask, is everybody ready? And we'll start, I think, with Professor Kent.
Excuse me, I would like to interject here.
Oh, okay.
With the permission of the chair, could we look at the running order in the first place? Because I've got a question and a suggestion about how it should be changed.
Okay.
I think it's quite unfair that the institution ordered the things the way they are, which means that Professor Kent is going to have the final word, and I suggest that I have the final word as the representative for the student, that we reverse that order and I speak last.
Okay. What do people think? I have never been on one when the lawyer hasn't asked for a change in the order. Never. Follow process? Change the order. We always just change the order.
But picking up the point that was made about not changing the order, that they
we have every right not to.
They have been given an opportunity to request in writing, in advance of the hearing, to change the order. Yeah. So the fact that they haven't is an important point.
Yeah, we have every right not to.
Yeah.
But you pick your battles.
And I wouldn't agree to the change if the change completely throws the presenting officer's case. I've been to one as a presenting officer when the barrister said, let's follow the orders of importance and facts. And then I was unable to think about the case at all. It was just completely through me. So that kind of changes then should be just
But it's reasonable to ask. If you're worried, at any time you can always say, well, can you wait outside? As a panel, we'll discuss this and get back to you. Okay, so that's fine. Right, so now, I think...
excuse me, I'm not finished yet. Mr. Walker has obviously paid for my services, so it would be only fair that I speak for him during this hearing.
And that Mr. Walker doesn't speak at all?
Yes, I'll speak. I'll consult my client if I need to.
What do you reckon? No. I was on once, and before we used to let that happen, and it was very clever because the student got off because we all said, well, we can't check his insight because he didn't say a word, and we gave him the benefit of a doubt. So the response to that, no, I'm sorry, we need to hear from Mr. Walker himself. You're welcome to represent him, but we do need to hear from him.
Okay, well, then there's the last thing. This is the most recent evidence that I've got from Mr. Walker, and the committee, in order to run a fair hearing, will need to give due consideration to...
And you're presenting this now?
I got it literally 2 days ago.
What do you reckon?
Well, it was not available to me earlier on.
Taking the German to consider the evidence and make a decision as a panel.
Okay, so I would there. Can you give us 5 minutes, please? Just a quick flick through these piles of paper, bundles which seem to suggest new medical information. What do you think, team?
No.
No? I think
I think clearly it
What do-
depends. I was enrolled there, by the way.
Yeah.
I think it clearly depends on the importance of the evidence, because I mean it could be prejudicial to the students.
Okay, well, there's so much here, but I mean, just have a quick look through. Oh, it's psychiatrists and another specialist, and oh, they're all saying he's got untreated ADHD. And so, what do you think? What I mean, if I say no, we really say no to this. What do you think the cons of that approach might be? Legitimate appeal. A legitimate appeal. So what are the pros of looking at the evidence?
We'll probably have to call another
Hearing.
hearing.
Or you could go a third way, which I think would be to say, okay, we've had a discussion, we will accept the documentation, but because, as I'm sure you're aware, all of this should have been received prior to the hearing, and in terms of process, your client has had enough time to prepare for this hearing. We are willing, however, to be, to be fair, we've decided that we will read these documents after the panel has happened and before we make a decision. You are happy with that?
I'm happy with that.
Right. Thank you. Excellent. Now,
And can I just be clear? I think the presenting officer has to be happy with that.
yes.
Yeah.
So
fair.
I would be
Yeah.
assertive and say, well,
Yeah.
I'm not happy with that.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, I would be happy
Yeah.
with that as long as the university gets an opportunity to read as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, what if he isn't happy with that?
I think we'd have to adjourn. You know, Andy's representing the university's position. If he'd said absolutely not, then I'd have to adjourn him.
And would there be a process if, on reading after the hearing, you found that you wanted to go back and have a discussion and return to the student? Is there another possibility of another discussion?
No.
Or
No.
is it
No.
closed?
That's it.
No, you then treat it as evidence that has been actually submitted to the committee, and they can make judgment on that evidence that is there.
You can't test it.
Well, no, but then they
No.
should have produced it before, shouldn't
Yeah,
they?
exactly, but you're going to take it after, read it afterwards,
Yeah.
and you can't come back to test it.
Mm.
No.
You can't apply any weight to it.
No.
You mention it during the proceeding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because if it's that important, the lawyer who they've produced, we might not have had time to read all the evidence, but one would assume if they think it's part of their mitigation for his behaviour, it can be discussed.
And you bring it up during the meeting, and you can
Yeah.
test it during the
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
That's fine.
So, for the purpose of this, we're just going to do a very, very quick presented case. You've got it written in front of you. So, Professor Kent, would you like to present the case for the university?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the panel. Mr. Walker. Mr. Walker and the university, beg your pardon, the report that Margaret Smith has prepared, the university's view is this is a well-prepared report, and I won't rehearse its content other than to say that the university accepts this report. You obviously have my report in front of you, so I'll just give you a short highlight of the university's view. It is agreed between Mr. Walker and the university that he took approximately 10 bottles of champagne that were the property of the university without permission. He initially denied this, however, and only agreed with the university when faced with overwhelming evidence. He's been, in the university's view, continually dishonest during the investigation. For example, as referenced in my report, he at one point said that a cleaner had told him to take the champagne, and we've established that that was not true. He's shown, in the university's view, no remorse or insight into the gravity of the situation, and he's offered no mitigating evidence to explain his behaviour, other than the worrying statement that he pays high fees to the university and deserves, in his words, freebies. It's of concern to the university that Mr. Walker threatened the bar manager when he indicated that he would need to report his concerns to the university, as they had been unable to resolve the matter informally at the time. The university's view is that Mr. Walker has demonstrated problems with probity and integrity and honesty and openness that conflict with guidance in relation to his fitness to practice medicine. And it is regretfully the university's view that the option that the committee should consider is option E, which in this instance would be expulsion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Barker. Would
Well,
you?
look, this is kind of prompted a lot of soul searching from me, and I went to see a psychiatrist, and as my lawyer has tried to tell you, I've been diagnosed with ADHD, and I think that explains a lot of what's happened here. The psychiatrist has said I've got symptoms of inattentiveness, hyperactivity and impulsiveness. And I think the committee needs to consider that as a health reason why I did this thing.
Yeah, as a lawyer on the panel, I would like to advise the committee that ADHD is a disability and is protected under the Equality Act 2010, and the failure of the committee to take this into account would be discriminatory. So you will need to take all this evidence in consideration.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Barker. The committee is fully aware of its responsibilities. Under the Equality Act, as we agreed at the start of the meeting when we had the late submission of evidence, in the spirit of that act, we were willing to consider the evidence both verbally and the written bundle, large bundle that you produced for us. We will consider
As
at the
long
end.
as the committee bears that in mind.
Absolutely. Okay, so I would like to pass over into the next stage to Professor Kent to ask questions to your client, Mr. Walker.
And it's probably appropriate to say I might start in a different place, but for the purposes of today, I'm going to cut straight to the chase and take us into questions around the events on the 30th of January. So, Mr. Walker, could you please tell the panel what actually happened that evening?
Well, I was just out walking past the boardrooms and on my way to the student bar, actually, and I saw those bottles of champagne on the table, and I just went in and took them. I've always said that, that's what I did, and, this is what I'm saying about my ADHD. I'm impulsive. It's an illness, and I agree I need some help with it, but you have to accept that I need some help, not punishment.
Okay. Well, let me take you back, if I may, to the evening itself. I understand this was boardroom 1 from memory, is that correct?
Yeah.
Was the door open at the time or closed?
I think it was boardroom 1, yeah, and I think the door was open and the bottles were just there, sitting on a table.
And could you explain to the panel what happened next?
As I just said, I went in, I picked up the bottles and then took them to the bar to share with my friends.
There, I think we're in agreement that there were 10 bottles. Is that right?
Yes, 10 bottles, I think, yeah.
Could you describe to us how you managed to carry so many bottles?
I think I went to get my rucksack, I think.
So you went to get a rucksack. So if I can just be clear, just to summarise, and correct me if I'm wrong, you saw the bottles and then took a decision to go away and retrieve your rucksack and come back straight away so that you could carry the 10 bottles. Is that a reasonable summary?
I think that's right, yeah.
Can I just ask where your rucksack was?
My locker in Genowing, I think.
I think that's right, isn't it? Because it's shown on the CCTV footage. The investigating officer report says that they showed you this footage in your first interview. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And in that footage, you're seen entering the room on 4 separate occasions. Can I just check this out with you so that we're on the same page? At 5:36, 5:49, 5:53, and 6:45. I guess what I'm trying to say, it appears to the university chair that Mr. Walker was making a conscious decision to steal the champagne. He went back 3 times, and this is on record, to check that the champagne was unattended so that he could retrieve it. It's the university's contention that this is not an impulsive act. This is actually a considered and deliberate act that was repeated 3 further times after the first instance. Mr. Walker, do you have a view on that?
Well, it's a very long question. I'll try. You said I think you're right. 4 times. I mean, I was just checking kind of whether whether it was actually not being used or not. I mean, the champagne was going to waste. I was checking. I don't know. I think I need to probably spend some time talking to my lawyer if that's all right.
What do you think? Would you give him 10 minutes to go and talk to his lawyer? Yeah, I think, why not? What do you think, Rachel?
There are pros and cons to both approaches.
Mm. So, vote of hands. Who would give him 10 minutes to talk to his lawyer? Who wouldn't? I guess I just think, I think in the back of mind, you're always thinking about the appeal, and they'll say, why on earth didn't you give this ADHD? You've just heard he's got a disability under the Act, and he wants some time to talk to his lawyer. Why didn't you let him? I don't think you'd want to let them repeatedly, but yeah, sort of reasonable to do that. Okay, so we've given you 10 minutes. You come back. Mr. Barker, would you briefly like to present the case?
Yes, yes. Before I do that, I would like to seek permission from the chair to ask the presenting officer one or two questions, because I have got some serious doubts about the investigating officer's report.
What do you think?
The question should be addressed to the chair rather than to the presenting officer.
What if I said to you, Andy, as presenting officer, do you want to be cross-examined by his lawyer?
Well, I think, see, my view, which may be different from other people's, is that we are very, very, very confident that our procedures are approved by the relevant statutory professional regulating bodies. I always get that the wrong way around. So, in fact, we've been commended for our procedures, so we should have great confidence in them. And of course, I think that the key point here is that the student, if not his representative, has had ample time to consider the quality of the written evidence, and to introduce questions about it at this stage, I think is unfair and unreasonable, and if you will, a little bit tactical.
Yeah.
So I would say, well, I would just be quite assertive here, and I'd say, well, with due respect, Chair and members of the panel, it's the university's position that there's been ample time for any irregularities or corrections to be made to this report, and Mr. Walker has not exercised his right to do so. So I question the need for him to do so now.
I think that's reasonable. Would you agree,
I
Robert?
would agree. Yeah, I would
If-
absolutely agree.
out of
Sometimes, I mean, in this case, the scenario, I mean, it goes on back to the scenario. The error is very small. So sometimes actually allowing that is helpful, because these questions are a bit ridiculous.
So say we did agree. Can you tell us what you'd be?
I would be saying to Professor Kent, can you look at the first page of the report, and the committee, could you also look at it? And at the beginning of the introduction, first statement, it says that the incident happened on Tuesday, the 30th of January 2017. I would ask Professor Kent whether he's got access to a calendar at this moment at all. Because if he had, he would have realized that the 30th of January was a Monday, not Tuesday. That means that this is an error, isn't it? And if there is that error at the front page, then probably the whole of the report is
Can just be
with
fine.
irregularities. Yeah.
All right. Any other things you'd like to
I don't
question?
think I need to go any further if such a fundamental thing is
Brilliant. Okay. So now the next case. Thank you for pointing that out.
What would you say as the chair?
I would say thank you very much for pointing out that minor error. We appreciate it. We will accept that. Yes. I would stress minor.
Have you ever asked what the relevance of that error was on the overall case that they were going to present?
I think I'm not sure I'd have got into. I mean, his point is that if there's an error, it shows that it could be a
wouldn't
risk.
often be that
Yeah,
simple,
that's
but
true.
this
True.
is the
Yeah.
scenario. So would you, if there was an error that was there, would you ask them about
Possibly.
what they thought the bearing of that error was on the
Maybe if it was something a bit more relevant.
But the more fundamental point is that the lawyer and the student have accepted this evidence, they've
Yeah.
had due notice of it, they've
Yeah,
come,
yeah,
and they've only
yeah,
just
yeah.
spotted it, so the materiality. I mean, as an investigating officer or presenting officer, you should check your dates.
You should. For the purposes of this, a much more quick, brief one. But Robert, would you like to present
I'm
your
sorry,
case for your?
I thought that we have agreed that I would go last.
Oh,
So-
yeah,
so I got to
sorry.
see how
No,
this
you're
committee,
quite
conducts
right.
this.
You're quite right. I'm just going with the normal. All right. Sorry. Fine. So now we have the opportunity. So please, when you ask a question, please ask it in the role that you have decided you are. And you have an opportunity to ask questions as a committee to our presenting officer, Professor Kent. So I would like a question ideally from a student, a clinician, a layperson, a psychiatrist, which might mean there's only one of those in the room. So, so I need a medic to ask a question. I mean, you can play the roles, but it might make sense to do.
Play the roles
But
because we're not even balanced.
no, fair enough.
Thank you very much. Well, I refer to Margaret Smith's investigating officer report. Now, unfortunately, it's not got numbered paragraphs, which I think we all agree is a good thing. And that is on page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the report. Telephone call to head of domestic services for the student union. In that report, it states in the paragraph that the investigating officer telephoned the head of domestic services to ask whether they could check with the cleaner working at the student union that night regarding Mr. Walker's account of events. She returned the call and said she'd spoken with the cleaner and that the cleaner finished at 5 p.m. and had no contact with anyone during her shift. And there were no cleaning operatives, cleaners in the building after 5 p.m. So it's the university's contention that this conversation didn't happen on the evidence available to it.
And not on CCTV either.
Oh yes, and it's not on CCTV either. The university would like an opportunity, subject to the decision of the panel, to reflect on the implications of this in reality. That's what I think we want to do. But I think what I would say, if I'm not quite in role here, so forgive me, but I think, well, the university's position, there's been an instance of dishonesty that is clear-cut and uncontested. There is an issue about when that was agreed and accepted by the student. Fundamentally, the student had to be dragged to accepting and apologising for this incident. It's the university's position, on the basis of the evidence it has had to date, that this was not a one-off impulsive act, but there was a deliberate and concerted attempt to remove the champagne. And the university hasn't had the opportunity as yet to have any further expert opinion on that matter, but the university's view is that this incident took place as described, and the materiality of any clinical diagnosis will be something the panel has to decide subsequently. If I was asked that question now, I'd say I'm not qualified or have expert evidence that allows me to answer that question. If the panel should decide, and of course you're on the panel, if you should decide when you review the evidence that further expert evidence is required, that's obviously a matter for you, and the university will be entirely supportive of that. I mean, it's a difficult one because we're all the university in this, if you will, except there's going to be someone from Imperial and whatever, but
Representing us.
well, it's the university's unequivocal view that staff in this instance would not have shared 10 bottles of champagne, and it doesn't alter the fact that Mr. Walker took the champagne without any permission whatsoever.
A few more questions to examine the case. We haven't heard from another medic. We've heard from a layperson, a psychiatrist and a student. Does anyone want to be the medic and ask a question? I would have thought, you know, if you beforehand what would happen in a real one is that you'd all discuss what kind of areas you want to cover. If I can plant something here, it's a fitness to practice hearing. So maybe something around why do you think this might not be compatible with being a doctor? As a far away. As a vague. Go on.
I would refer on behalf of the University panel to the General Medical Council guidance on the expected behaviours of students and professionals, and this is clearly incompatible with the duty of honesty, openness and integrity as defined by the General Medical Council. I think it's fairly straightforward and clear cut. Yeah, well, I've got no answer to that because I'm off script now, and I hadn't. Yeah, no, I think.
Well, because it didn't go to hearing at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, it didn't go to hearing at the time.
There's no evidence.
Yeah. It's sort of
I-
contextual information, but it never. We can't defend the evidence.
I mean, I would amplify the point that Robert made so well earlier, that if you can be balanced and if you can comment favourably on things the student has done, or you can say, we don't think this is relevant because, you should be trying to acknowledge, as you pointed out, Robert, things that the student has done which support their case. I mean, it undermines any other case if you kind of systematically focus on the negative, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay, now I'd like to move on to, sorry, here's a
I
burning.
was going to ask, would the panel dig into things around that ability to practice issue, because there's a theft, there's sustained dishonesty, and there's aggressive behaviour. Would they sort of want to dig into exactly which one you felt the issue was? Because
I mean, it depends, but I mean, none of those are really compatible with being a doctor, are they? So I'm not sure how much time you'd want to spend on that. Maybe more in the questions to the student. So have a think now about questions to the student. And again, beforehand, you'll have gone through, you'll have tried to cover the areas. Questions to Mr. Walker?
I think it means that I sometimes can't control my actions. That there's this kind of medical condition, like a disability, that means that sometimes I'm not fully in control of my actions. But I think the psychiatrist told me that if I have some treatment, then it'll be much better, and I can go on continue to be a doctor. Well, I saw the bottles. I walked past them. And I was just checking that they were going to waste. Yeah, I guess I haven't got that many friends on the course. Yeah, that is hard, and I think it is a lonely place being here, and I don't know that the university has really helped me with that either. I wanted to sort of hang out with some people in the bar, I suppose. I think that's reasonable. I don't know what that the bar manager, I don't know what he's talking about. I know him really well. I'm in the bar, and I just wanted to have a chat with him, and he seemed to kind of interpret that as me being aggressive. I consider him a friend. Well, I did do until now. But there was a cleaner there, and they seemed to be sort of cleaning the room up, and actually they said that it was okay if I took them. Well, they were cleaning the room, so it looked like everything was over. That kind of added to the idea that everything was over, and that those bottles were there for sharing, I suppose. I mean, like, it's champagne. It's like, you know, this is, we pay thousands of pounds to come here, and then these kind of high and mighty council people get their champagne. Sometimes I find it hard to kind of balance up those kind of arguments. You know, there's this part of my brain which is kind of pushing me to do something and doesn't allow me to reason out properly sometimes. Like I'm saying, it's a disability that I've got. I think the panel isn't really taking that seriously. I need some treatment, and then I'll be able to think about things a bit more clearly. Okay, I mean, I agree it's probably not right, but I don't think it's right that we pay all this money and that, you know, these people get free champagne. Neither of them are right. I wouldn't be too hard on them, I suppose. I'd kind of think, well, look, you know, they saw 10 bottles of champagne going to waste and they wanted to share it with some of their colleagues. I mean, some people had just finished their exams. It was kind of a bit of celebration for some people. I think that's, yeah, maybe fair enough. It's a bit, you know, we're not in a pub, are we? It's a bit different here. You know, it's like, it's a university. The staff, it's kind of common practice, to be honest. I mean, I don't know how much time you spend in the student bar, but it's kind of common practice for the staff just to share stuff with us afterwards. You know, they get to know us, we get to know them. It's kind of usually quite fun. It's a different thing. It's not a bar, you know. Well, I suppose I would agree with that. Yeah, I think that probably is fair enough. I mean, you know, I'm a member of this university, like the same that these people were supposed to be having the champagne. They're members of the university. So we're all really the same. So yeah, I agree. I think it is, yeah, and it has made a lot of things kind of that's happened to me in the past. It's given a bit of sense to them, I suppose. Now that I've been out, you know, have the opportunity to see this psychiatrist, he's really explained stuff to me. Yeah. Well, I don't think I was fully aware of what it was. I suppose. I mean, I think you can have a problem and not know what it is. I mean, that's why that psychiatrist is an expert. They've given their expert opinion on me. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not an expert. So I think that was really helpful. I think the university could have helped me a bit more earlier on to identify that as a problem, to be honest.
Okay. Thank you very much, panel. Very briefly, Andy, would you like to sum up your case with anything additional that we've heard before?
I would just simply say to the panel that the university's case is as stated. There's nothing that's changed in the course of these proceedings that I'm minded to reflect on and change in the evidence and view provided. So I'll just end there.
Okay, fine. Mr. Barker,
Yes,
over to you.
Thank you. I have heard all the evidence, and the panel has heard the evidence. The panel is aware that I'm suspicious about the reliability of the report, and hopefully the panel will take that into consideration. Mr. Walker has mental condition, which the panel is now aware of. He struggles to concentrate. He struggled to concentrate to answer all the questions. It was very difficult for him to respond to all those difficult and challenging questions from the panel. he hasn't been supported throughout his studies. If the panel went on to expel him, you would be in breach of disability legislation and your duties towards the student. Thank you.